I need everybody to pump the brakes. I can already feel the comments starting to flow in because coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about that guy right there, Aaron Rodgers, because Albert Breer, NFL Insider, put out a recent article saying that some NFL teams believe Aaron Rodgers is still waiting for the Minnesota Vikings. My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome into Vikings Now by Chat Sports. Coming up on today's show, we're just going to talk about it, and I got a lot of strong opinions on this whole situation. But I want everybody to hop down in the comment section here real quick. How would you feel? I think this has less than a 0.5% chance of happening, but how would you feel if the Vikings actually went out there and signed Aaron Rodgers before the start of OTAs? Just let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. All right, let's discuss this nonsense because Albert Breer put out an article saying that some NFL teams think that Aaron Rodgers is waiting for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's just that time of the year where obviously Albert Breer, he's got to pay the bills, he's got to get clicks, and I think this article, is a perfect example of that. But this is specifically what Breer had to say, saying there's some teams I've talked to, they're still kind of wondering, is he just waiting out the Vikings, Because the Vikings would be an ideal scenario. One of the best play callers in the league, and head coach Kevin O'Connell, 9 dome games. You're guaranteed 9 dome games per year. There's some element of that. But I checked in with the Vikings. I still don't expect that. They're moving forward with J.J. McCarthy, so he really has no other option other than Pittsburgh or retiring. And, I don't think Albert Breer is out of line at all for, saying that, hey, some NFL teams think that Rodgers could be waiting on the Vikings because I truly believe Rodgers could be waiting for Minnesota. And if I was Rodgers and I was in his camp and maybe I was a voice in his ear, I'd probably be telling him the same thing. Hey, just wait till OTAs play out. Maybe the Vikings kind of get cold feet on J.J. McCarthy and maybe they toss you a late, July deal or something along those lines. It makes some sense, but I still think Rodgers kind of has cold feet with Pittsburgh. They just traded George Pickens. They've never been a successful offensive team over the last couple of years. So it does make sense why he's waiting out Minnesota. And also, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi has made this very clear that they have had discussions about Aaron Rodgers. This was about a month ago. Kwesi and KOC was just talking to the media, and they pretty much came out and said, of course we had conversations about Aaron Rodgers. And it makes sense. You have to go through that process. He is a 4-time MVP. He is a Super Bowl MVP, one of the best quarterbacks we have ever seen play in the NFL. And the Vikings clearly are making 2025 a Super Bowl year. The way they have kind of negotiated these contracts, backloading a bunch of them, and really viewing this 2025 roster as potentially the best roster they could have over the next 5 seasons. So, yes, you start connecting some dots. Maybe the Vikings view Rodgers as, just for 2025 as a better option than JJ. But again, I think this has less than a 0.5% chance of happening. But I do want to give credit to my coworker here, Jack Sperry. Shout out to Jack_Sperry on Twitter. Give him a follow over there if you guys have not already. But he's our Steelers guy. And he was listening to a Q&A that just dropped earlier today. And some guy asked him, would you ever go to the Chicago Bears? Kind of poking fun at Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers responded saying, I believe there's a team that might play in Chicago this year on a road trip. So I was looking at this, just all the teams that are playing in Chicago and some teams that could have a need at the quarterback position. And it is the Steelers, the New Orleans Saints, but also the Minnesota Vikings. And, I think the Monday night game, week 1 in Chicago, it would have all types of juice, regardless if Aaron Rodgers is on the Minnesota Vikings. Because you got J.J. McCarthy versus Caleb Williams, JJ returning to his hometown. That article came out about Caleb wanting to play for the Vikings. So that game would have juice regardless. But could you imagine the juice that game would have if Aaron Rodgers is rocking the purple and gold? But I think Rodgers just saying this, and I think he's smart enough to realize, the Vikings play in Chicago. Oh, the Saints play in Chicago. They have a need at the quarterback spot. And obviously the Steelers do. I just think this is Rodgers wanting the attention, where he knows that all 3 of those fan bases will view that quote as, oh, Rodgers is thinking about signing with us. And honestly, I think he's just kind of pulling Steelers fans, along for this ride. But I think this just comes down to attention. It's that time of the, offseason here. And I will say the parallels between Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, especially at the tail half of the career, not only going to the Jets, but how they've handled the offseasons, it is pretty damn identical. They're both kind of manipulating media. I think Rodgers is one of the best of all time at doing so, kind of steering the conversation in a certain direction. But I just think this comes down to attention for AR on this one. But I'll ask you guys this. Make the call for me. Should the Vikings sign Aaron Rodgers? I'm expecting to see a lot of P for passes down below in the comment section. I'm expecting the see a lot of interesting comments heading my direction for just even doing this show today. But you guys make the call. Should the Vikes sign Aaron Rodgers? I'm going to hear your thoughts down below. So I really do believe there is no chance, or I think there's no chance in the world where I would sign Aaron Rodgers. But this decision comes down to Kevin O'Connell. And if Kevin O'Connell, and if we got that notification, like, all right, the Vikes are signing Aaron Rodgers, it's official. I know a lot of people would be freaking out, but I would have some faith in Kevin O'Connell, who knows more about football than me or anybody watching today's show. I would support that decision, that he would believe that, yeah, maybe J.J. McCarthy is the future, but just for 2025, Aaron Rodgers gives us the best chance. I'll explain that, here a little more in depth. But before we do so, if you guys want to get a new Minnesota Vikings sweatshirt or hoodie today, hit that link, chatsports.com/Vikings hoodie. I got that link for you guys in the comments section and description of today's show. Some of these hoodies are up to 50% off, so take advantage of the sweet deal we have going on right now. I love this one. I'm probably going to end up getting this over the next couple of days here. So if you guys want to get one yourself, chatsports.com/Vikings hoodie. Hit that link in the comment section and description of today's show. All right, so let's talk about this a little more. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers here and the Minnesota Vikings because, it does make sense why Rodgers has some interest in the Vikes, and I could see a world why the Vikings would have some interest in Rodgers. But let's just talk about his play over the last couple of seasons. Now, obviously the 2023 year only played in 4 snaps, ended up tearing his Achilles for the New York Jets, and this past season, if you just look at the touchdown-to-interception ratio, you're probably saying, all right, Rodgers still has a lot left in the tank. But I even think it goes back to the 2022 year in Green Bay where, 26 touchdowns, 12 picks. Looks good on paper, but he was not good for the Packers that year. That was the year that they lost to the Detroit Lions in Week 18 with a chance to go to the playoffs, and he was just forcing the ball to Devontae Adams late in that game. And I think it's pretty obvious that Rodgers is a cooked product of who he once was, but the question becomes, is a cooked Aaron Rodgers better than J.J. McCarthy in 2025? Like, that's the question that Kevin O'Connell and this Vikings front office is diving into. And maybe they've already shut the door on that. And maybe this is just Breer putting out this article, but what if there's a chance where they are, doing the due diligence of just going throughout this whole process and trying to determine if Rodgers gives them a better chance in 25 compared to McCarthy? Now, I would make the argument that even if you do view Rodgers as a better option for just next season over JJ, I still think JJ needs the experience. And I could also make an argument that, let's just say the Vikings did sign Rodgers and they lost in the NFC Championship game. Okay, that would be obviously a successful season. You're, one of the 4 teams left in the playoffs. But I could also say that losing with JJ McCarthy, let's just say in the wild card round, I think that would have more value because JJ would get that experience. He kind of gets that battle shield off his chest, and then he can move in the next year going through a full season. And also, you just need to take advantage of his contract. You already lost 1 year because of the torn meniscus. Obviously, the way Sam Darnold played, JJ probably wouldn't have seen the football field regardless. But I just think even if you view Rodgers as the better option right now, you got to start J.J. McCarthy. You got to get him these reps. You got to get him this experience because it will pay out in the long run. And I know the Vikings are, setting up the roster as a very short-term window over the next couple of seasons, but you also got to think long-term. You got to get this kid the experience. But more news on J.J. McCarthy. This is absolutely awesome. Congrats to him and his fiance. They are actually expecting a child, and the due date is supposed to be in September. They announced this on Instagram a couple of days ago. So shout out to JJ. That's awesome stuff. Going to be a dad. Going to be the franchise quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, and hopefully gets kind of that dad strength heading in this season. But I just wanted to get you guys that news there. But, hey, congrats to JJ. He's going to be a dad. Let's show him some love to round out today's show. Type those 9s, type his jersey number down below in the comments section. See you guys next time. As always, just go Vikes.